Imagine this. Dawn in Rome, 67 AD. There's a wet whisper. A marble blade slides between ribs. Blood starts pooling on the forum's white stone.
Yeah, and the official story, the one they put out immediately, Senator Marcus Flavius is dead. Just another power play, politics.
Exactly. Just another casualty of the Roman elite's games.
But that was the cover, a calculated lie. Our sources, and this is pretty shocking, they confirm Flavius wasn't killed over taxes or, Nero's bad singing. No, he was silenced because he'd found something. He followed a trail of bodies, small bodies, deep under the Palatine Hill.
Oh.
He found out what the emperors really did with the children of their enemies, and that's secret. It wasn't just some rogue act, it was institutional, systemic, and greatly terrifying.
Okay. Let's unpack this, because we think of ancient Rome, the eternal city. I mean, this is where Western law kind of started, right? Amazing engineering, military power.
It's the classic picture of civilization.
Right. But the sources we're digging into today, fragments of testimony, coded letters, archaeological finds that were quickly sealed up, they paint a very different picture. Beneath that shiny marble facade, there were these systematic, institutionalized horrors that actually sustained the empire's power.
And we need to be clear here. We're not just talking about the stuff everyone knows. The public crucifixions, the gladiators, Caligula's excesses. That's brutal, yes, but it's almost expected brutality in some ways.
This is different.
This deep dive, it's about the shadows behind the shadows. We're looking at secrets like the ones detailed in the Quiet Historian's video transcript. Practices so extreme they shocked Romans.
Which, considering what they watched in the Colosseum, is saying something.
It's saying a lot. That's a really high bar to cross. And the evidence suggests these weren't just, isolated incidents of decadence. This was calculated imperial policy for centuries.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to piece these fragments together, to try and grasp the full calculated scope of these, atrocities. We're looking at a system where absolute power didn't just corrupt. It seemed to transform civilization itself into this mechanism of just unimaginable cruelty. And we have to start right where Marcus Flavius met his end, with the evidence pointing to Section 1, the ritual use of children in the Old Masters.
Okay, so the first big piece of physical evidence, it's buried deep. Underneath the Church of San Clemente in Rome today, back in the 1860s, archaeologists were digging below the church, and they found these deep underground chambers.
And what they found was so explosive that the Vatican basically sealed it off.
Pretty much. These were complexes from the 1st century AD. Frescoes, layouts, none of it matched known Roman religious practices. It pointed to something else entirely.
And the timing here is key, isn't it? This wasn't just some random dig.
No, it goes back to 64 AD, the Great Fire of Rome. Remember Nero building his massive golden house, the Domus Aurea? Well, his engineers, clearing the wreckage on the Palatine Hill, stumbled onto a network of tunnels. And these tunnels were old, predating the imperial palace itself.
So not just service tunnels or storage.
Definitely not. These were ancient, some parts possibly older than Rome itself. And the inscriptions they found, a mix of Latin and this, corrupted Etruscan, dedicated to entities, beings, whose names just don't show up in the official Roman pantheon. Or the Greek one, for that matter.
Suggesting what? Pre-Roman cults? Or something else?
It points to either a direct line to very ancient, maybe pre-Roman beliefs, or perhaps something entirely alien that the ruling class had somehow tapped into and, institutionalized. They were worshiping what some texts call the older masters.
Older masters, okay.
Yeah.
And the worship itself, what form did it take? This is where it gets really dark, isn't it?
This is where the Vetus letter comes in. Found in 1923, a papyrus fragment from the Villa of the Papyri at Herculaneum, saved by the Vesuvius eruption. It's a letter dated around 71 AD, from Gaius Visus Valens to his brother. And Vetus describes attending what he calls the deepest mysteries beneath Rome.
Who's there?
The elite, senators, powerful military figures, rich merchants, the people running things above ground. They were going down there to serve these older masters.
And the rituals required.
Children. Specifically, yes. Children captured during military campaigns. And not just any children. The focus was on the children of defeated tribal chiefs, enemy nobles, high-value individuals.
In the preparation. It wasn't just grabbing them and taking them down there.
No. This is what strips away any idea of this being just, random violence. Vetus writes they were kept in underground pens for months. Fed a specific diet, Bread soaked in wine, but the wine was mixed with unknown herbs. The goal, he says, was to make their minds pliant. He describes their eyes having the empty look of those who see beyond the veil.
Gosh, that sounds purposeful, like they were trying to induce a specific mental state.
Exactly. Meticulous methodology. The purpose wasn't just sacrifice in the way we might think of it. It seems it was about achieving some state of ritual purity, or maybe profound psychological surrender, turning the victim into an instrument, a living conduit, maybe, to these underworld deities.
And timed, precisely.
Just timed to specific astronomical events, yeah. This wasn't spontaneous cruelty. It was systematic, planned.
And it wasn't just a one-off thing under one emperor. It escalated.
Clearly, under Domitian, specifically that's 81 to 96 AD, the official records start showing this weird pattern. Systematic disappearances of noble children from conquered lands.
Always explain the way, though.
Always. Casualties of war, disease, or maybe they were adopted by a wealthy Roman family. Plausible deniability built in.
But there's military evidence suggesting otherwise. The Vindolanda tablets.
Right. Found near Hadrian's Wall in Britain, 1934. Mostly routine military stuff, supply lists, that kind of thing. But there was one decoded message.
What did it say?
It's from a Roman commander, explicitly mentions the sacred cargo from the Brigantes. The Brigantes were a tribe in northern Britain.
Sacred cargo.
Yeah. And it gives instructions. Make sure the transports reach Rome before the winter solstice. Why? For renewal ceremonies. And these ceremonies, it says, require untainted blood.
Renewal ceremonies. And that phrase, it doesn't pop up anywhere else in normal military talk.
Nowhere. But it does appear again and again in those fragmented texts found under San Clemente. It's like a horrifying code word.
Connecting the military supply chain, conquered people in Britain, all the way back to these secret underground rituals in Rome.
The logistics involved. Coordinating shipments across the whole empire disguised as normal transport to supply a secret ritual needing specific human cargo by a specific date. That screams central management. High level, this had to be an imperial program.
And then actual physical proof is found.
Yeah.
And suppressed. 1978, Palazzo Massimo in Rome.
During renovations, yeah. They broke into a sealed underground chamber. Inside, the remains of dozens of children.
And the evidence on the remains.
Ritual scarring, consistent with the descriptions in that Vetus letter. And crucially, carbon dating placed the deaths between 70 and 95 AD.
Right in the Domitian era, matching the Vetus letter and the Vindolanda message time frame.
The evidence was pretty damning.
So naturally, they sealed it up with concrete.
Immediately, Vatican claimed the remains for reburial. The whole thing just disappeared. The idea of systematic, state-sanctioned ritual child murder at the highest levels, too explosive.
Which makes you wonder about historians like Cassius Dio. He wrote later, vaguely mentioning practices in Rome.
Right, practices that made the cannibalism of distant barbarians seem like the customs of civilized men. He never spelled it out. Probably terrified of retribution. The people involved or their families were likely still powerful.
So the distinction here is crucial. Public crucifixions, the arena that's about controlling the masses through fear. These rituals seem different.
Totally different. This is about the elite systematically using conquered people, specifically children, seemingly for some kind of metaphysical power or connection.
And it explains what that Christian writer, Minucius Felix, was talking about.
Exactly. He accused the Romans of projecting their own hidden practices onto the Christians. He said they accused Christians of the very abominations they themselves practiced in darkness. The ritual use of children was likely their deepest, darkest secret.
Wow. Okay. That sets a truly disturbing stage for the next layer you mentioned. Section 2. Medical cannibalism and imperial diuretics. This isn't spiritual ritual. Calculated anthropophagy. As medicine.
Yeah, it's a shift, but it shares that same systematic, calculated element. We're talking about the routine use of human flesh, blood, organs, but framed as high-end medicine, aphrodisiacs, strength enhancers.
And this came from Egypt.
The origins seem to trace back to sophisticated Egyptian medical traditions that Rome absorbed after conquering Egypt, especially Alexandria around 30 BC.
Wow.
They didn't just bring back gold and grand, they brought back some really intense medical knowledge.
The core belief being, you consume a part, you gain its quality.
Essentially, yes. The idea was that specific human organs, if prepared correctly, dried, powdered, mixed into wine or honey, could literally transfer the qualities of the deceased person to the consumer. Strength, courage, maybe even intelligence. This created a horrifyingly specialized market.
Even Galen, the famous physician to Marcus Aurelius, he knew about this.
He had to. Galen was the medical authority. His writings contain these oblique references. He talks about preparations made from the vital essence of conquered enemies. Carefully worded, you know.
He had to be careful. His patients were probably asking for this stuff.
Absolutely. He even describes something called the imperial elixir, supposedly made from the hearts of young, strong warriors killed in the arena, ground up with exotic spices, and emperors apparently consumed this before big military campaigns.
Believing they were literally absorbing the warrior's strength.
Literally. Physical prowess, courage, tactical skill, maybe, whatever that warrior represented.
And this peaked under Commodus, the emperor who fought as a gladiator himself.
It seems so. He reigned from 177 to 192 AD. And yes, sources say he was obsessed with consuming the flesh of gladiators he personally defeated, to gain their skill, their power.
But it wasn't just Commodus's personal madness, right? There were records.
Right. Beyond Commodus, we have fragments from the Byzantine Bibliotheca Mariana. These are basically secret Roman imperial records saved by the later Byzantine Empire, and they detail regular deliveries to the palace. The term used is therapeutic specimens.
Chilling. That bureaucratic language again.
Exactly. These weren't random body parts. They were carefully selected organs from executed prisoners, prepared using complex recipes, Roman, Egyptian, Persian traditions, all mixed together. It suggests a parallel supply chain running alongside the one for rituals, institutional support.
And there's that inventory list from 188 AD. Specific.
It's incredibly specific and chilling. It lists things like 12 vials of heart's essence from defeated nobles preserved in expensive Chios wine, 6 measures of brain matter from Germanic chieftains dried and powdered with cinnamon, and maybe the most meticulous, the liver of a Nubian princess, aged in honey for 7 years.
7 years. The level of planning. It's not magic, it's logistics. Medicalized strategic cannibalism. Consuming the defeated to strengthen the empire.
And each entry notes the perceived qualities it would impart. It wasn't just about the physical substance, it was metaphysical procurement, power optimization.
And this wasn't just the emperors doing this, it filtered down.
Evidence from Pompeii suggests so. The eruption froze everything in 79 AD. Excavations found signs that wealthy Romans consumed human blood supposedly for epilepsy and ground human bone for impotence.
In medical facilities.
In what looked like upscale medical workshops, yes. Carbonized remains show signs of systematic butchering of corpses, clearly for medicinal extraction. Victims, probably slaves, prisoners, easily disposable in a large Roman city. It seems to have been a normalized, if private, part of elite life. The underlying logic, what Roman doctors called sympathetic consumption, gets even more strategic when you think about knowledge.
Consuming organs to get.
Now, that was the belief. Eating specific parts of specific enemies could grant you their skills, their wisdom. Letters between Roman governors describe hunting down and executing captured scholars or priests from conquered cultures.
Not just to eliminate them,
but to consume their brains in rituals designed to absorb their learning. Think about the conquest of Gaul. Those hunts for Druid priests weren't just about crushing resistance. They might have been aimed at literally harvesting accumulated Druidic knowledge through consumption, internalizing the enemy's power structure.
That leap from consuming flesh for strength to consuming brains for knowledge, it's horrifying. And it leads us right into the next area, Section 3, extreme cults and psychological warfare.
Yeah, the transition makes sense. And the trigger event seems to be Vesuvius again, 79 AD. The traditional gods looked pretty useless when Pompeii and Herculaneum were buried.
So people turned elsewhere, at darker things.
Exactly. Deities promising power through darkness, through inverting the natural order. The cult of Noxit Turner, the Eternal Night, pops up right after Vesuvius. It becomes powerful.
What were they aiming for? Those bronze tablets found under the Pantheon in 1885. They mentioned the Great Inversion.
Their goal was huge. Rituals to reverse the natural order, gain dominion over death itself, and the membership was weirdly diverse. Senators, slaves, soldiers, regular civilians, all involved in these intense rites that could last for days.
How did they prepare people for this?
The prep was intense, almost scientific in its approach to breaking down reality. Severe sensory deprivation weeks in total darkness, fed only bread and water, but laced with hallucinogens.
What kind of hallucinogens?
Analysis suggests things like ergot fungus related to LSD, maybe mixed with processed opium derivatives. Powerful stuff. The goal was to induce a state they called sacred madness.
Where they couldn't tell reality from hallucination.
Pretty much total loss of ego, loss of boundaries, and once they were in that state, the central ritual began.
Which involved?
torture, slow, deliberate torture of captured enemies, often children, prisoners of war. And while this was happening, the participants would consume the victim's blood, sexual fluids.
Ugh. Why? What was the belief?
They believed this act of extreme violation, combined with their own chemically induced madness, would literally grant them power over life and death. It was about transformation, achieving a state of consciousness where they could, supposedly, talk to non-human entities.
And emperors got involved in this too. Caracalla.
Caracalla, yeah. Ruled 211-217 AD. He was known to be obsessed with magic, foreign sorcerers. Coded references suggest that before major campaigns, he'd retreat to special underground chambers beneath the Palatine.
With whom?
With captured enemy nobles and their families.
And what happened to them?
The descriptions of the aftermath are chilling. Prisoners who survived were returned, changed in ways that made death seem merciful, minds completely shattered, just capable of whispering repetitive prayers to, well, entities whose names apparently couldn't be spoken in human language.
The psychological damage wasn't a side effect, it was the point.
It seems so. The deliberate goal. Because the cult, and likely the imperial sponsors, believe something startling. That minds broken in specific ways could become functional bridges between worlds. They could perceive things, communicate with forces that normal people couldn't.
They were trying to create living oracles, intelligence assets, from broken minds.
That seems to be the practical, strategic angle that interested the administration.
And we have physical proof of the methods.
Yeah.
From the Domus Aurea.
During renovations in the 1930s, yeah, they found these specialized chambers and the restraining devices. They weren't just simple shackles, they were complex mechanisms designed for precise control over sensory input masks for total darkness, ways to dampen sound, and also precise control over the subject's physical condition.
And chemical traces confirmed.
Both preservatives to keep subjects alive longer and residues of the same psychoactive drugs mentioned in the cult texts. It points to a really advanced, weaponized understanding of physiology and psychology.
Rome wasn't just building roads and aqueducts, they were trying to harness suffering itself.
Harnessing the deepest parts of human consciousness, the extremes of pain and fear, all for strategic advantage.
That deliberate weaponization, it flows right into Section 4, systematic biological warfare. This sounds terrifyingly modern.
It really does. Anticipating modern bioweapons by, almost 2 millennia. And we're not talking about just, throwing a dead cow over a wall. This was scientific.
Where did it start?
The origins seem to be during the Jewish Wars, 66-73 AD. Roman commanders initially just observed how disease spread rapidly in besieged cities, overcrowding, bad water, the usual factors.
But then physicians got involved.
Yeah.
Especially those trained in Alexandria.
Exactly. Those observations turned into systematic techniques. We have the Oxyrhynchus Papyrus, that military manual from around 97 AD. It has a whole section titled On the Cultivation of Beneficial Pestilence.
Beneficial pestilence. That's, wow. What did it describe?
Methods for collecting and preserving seeds of weakness, basically plague materials, tissues, fluids from victims, and then how to introduce these concentrated materials into enemy water supplies or food stores.
And then you had to time it.
Oh yeah. Detailed instructions. Use winter for attacks when people are crowded indoors. Maximize the spread. Use summer when hygiene is tougher. Water sources are more vulnerable.
And they could target specific populations.
That's one of the most disturbing parts. The manual describes selecting specific strains of disease based on the age or general health profile of the target population. Early, targeted biological warfare. Weaken the enemy's fighting force, or their farmers maybe, without wiping everyone out. You still want slaves and resources later.
And the Antonine Plague, the huge pandemic in 165-180 AD, usually seen as natural, but maybe not entirely.
The new evidence, letters between field commanders and imperial doctors, suggests deliberate collection of plague materials during the pandemic.
Good.
They discuss methods for preserving samples during long journeys, specifically to maintain virulence. Potency?
That implies stockpiling, planning for future deployment. They understood contagion way before germ theory.
They clearly understood contaminated materials spread disease, and they were working on concentrating the infectious agents to make them more potent.
Did they try to engineer diseases?
It looks like it. Roman physicians learned to modify pathogens, maybe by passaging them through different animals or combining infections, creating compound plagues that were harder to treat, maybe overwhelm the immune system faster. It hints at a level of biological understanding that just seems out of time.
And Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, he was involved.
This is where it gets deeply uncomfortable with his image. Documents, apparently from his administration, describe research programs aimed at finding or developing diseases that would affect specific genetic populations more severely than others.
Targeted ethnic bioweapons within the empire.
It looks that way, a way to selectively weaken rebellious territories, maybe certain Germanic tribes or groups in the East, while leaving Roman or allied populations less affected. Masked as public health research, perhaps, but the intent seems strategic and, frankly, genocidal.
Is there archaeological proof of this kind of research?
Yes. Near Cologne, Germany, excavations at a Roman military complex uncovered what look very much like labs, specialized equipment for cultivating microorganisms.
Including?
Sealed chambers, designed to maintain specific temperatures and humidity levels. Why would you need that in a standard military base? Unless you were cultivating specific strains of bacteria or viruses outside of a host. It looks like an early bioweapons lab, 2,000 years ago.
Okay, so we have ritual abuse, medical cannibalism, psychological warfare, biological warfare. This brings us back to the supply chain. Section 5. Industrial-scale child trafficking and experimentation. This wasn't just a black market.
Absolutely not. This was official, sanctioned, integrated into the imperial administration. The same people managing grain shipments and taxes were managing the shipment of children. Provincial governors had quotas.
Quotas for children with specific traits.
Age, gender, origin, physical condition, matching the needs not just of the rituals, but also these research programs, the biological ones, the psychological ones.
And the Ostia documents, found in 1961, laid this bureaucracy bare.
They really did. These weren't scribbled notes from some smuggler. These were official administrative records, detailed inventories, shipping manifests, classifying children by origin, condition.
And the language they used.
Utterly dehumanizing, treating children like livestock or raw materials, terms like galaxy specimens of premium quality or donation subjects suitable for prolonged experimentation. The bureaucracy stripped them of humanity, making exploitation just, efficient, morally neutral paperwork.
Who were the main consumers driving this horrific trade?
Several groups. Gladiatorial schools needed young boys not just for training, but for these elaborate, often sexualized theatrical shows that combined violence and spectacle.
And the cults again?
Private cults, mystery religions, yes. They often required children for their rituals, believing that extreme transgression involving innocence was a powerful bridge to the divine. Innocent suffering is a key to transformation.
And direct imperial involvement.
Hadrian.
The Builder Emperor.
Hadrian, yes. Known for the wall, the Pantheon rebuild, the cultured administrator. He personally authorized setting up what were called developmental facilities in remote areas, hidden away.
Developmental facilities. Sounds benign. It wasn't.
Far from it. These were research centers. Children were subjected to systematic programs, controlled environments, extreme deprivation, intense indoctrination, even physical modification.
Why? What were they studying?
Human limits, psychological and physical adaptation under extreme stress. How much could a human body take? How could a mind be shaped? How could you break and rebuild someone? It was about gaining detailed knowledge of human vulnerability for state power.
And the children who survived these places?
They were referred to as assets, transformed, broken and rebuilt into specialized servants or maybe participants in those rituals precisely because their responses were now conditioned, their psychology permanently altered, total compliance guaranteed through subjugation.
Is there archaeological evidence for these facilities?
Near Trier, also in Germany, excavations uncovered large holding areas clearly designed for hundreds of children, facilities for medical exams, for what looks like psychological conditioning rooms, even areas for physical modification.
And the remains found there
Showed systematic malnutrition, evidence of deliberate injuries that were allowed to heal wrongly, perhaps, and signs of medical interventions aimed at altering normal development, maybe stunting growth, altering bone structure, trying to create something other than a normal human.
That level of control, it's almost the end point of everything else. Which brings us to the final horror. Section 6. Research into extended suffering and the oracles of pain. Taking torture beyond interrogation into something else.
Exactly. This was systematic research into pain and fear itself, not just how to inflict it, but how to sustain it, manage it, and what happens to the human mind at the absolute edge. Again, anticipating modern psychological torture, maybe even exceeding it in some ways.
Originating again in the Jewish wars, because normal torture wasn't working on zealots.
Right. Commanders found that religious fervor provided incredible resistance. So the goal shifted. Not just break them for information, but study the process. Imperial physicians under Vespasian and Titus started developing, well, enhanced techniques.
How enhanced?
We have the Pergamon Treatise, written by a physician named Gaius Stinius Maximus around 88 AD. He describes experiments in, quote, extension of consciousness beyond natural boundaries.
What does that even mean?
It meant keeping subjects alive, conscious, in extreme pain for incredibly long periods. This required a sophisticated understanding of physiology, circulation, nervous system function, just to prevent death. Using temperature shifts, constant moisture, chemical irritants applied to sensitive areas, creating what he called layered pain experiences.
Attacking multiple senses at once.
And combining it with psychological methods, breaking down identity, blurring reality, making the subject unable to tell internal thoughts from external stimuli, pushing the mind past sanity into somewhere else.
And that somewhere else was the goal, because something unusual happened.
This is where it becomes strategically vital to the empire. Subjects kept in these extreme states, sensory overload, maybe chemical dependencies too, sometimes showed abilities normal people don't have.
Like what?
Apparent telepathy. Precognitive flashes. Claims of contact with, well, non-perceptual entities. Things we'd call paranormal.
And the imperial court saw this not as madness, but as a resource.
A potential strategic tool. The idea of creating oracles of pain, not just getting intelligence from torture, but getting intelligence through the altered state induced by extreme, prolonged torture, weaponizing madness itself.
Did they actually set up facilities for this?
It seems Domitian planned it. A coded letter found in Duriurpos mentions his plan for facilities to create these oracles to serve as advisors, seeking strategic insights from induced insanity.
And Hadrian expanded on this.
Under Hadrian, the program apparently reached its peak sophistication. Research centers disguised as medical schools. They developed what were called graduated extremity protocols, systematic procedures, incrementally increasing the physical and psychological stress while meticulously monitoring the subject's mental state, identifying the exact threshold where normal consciousness breaks down and these altered states emerge. A repeatable process for creating controlled psychosis.
And the people who survived this, what happened to them?
The successful ones, the ones who reached the desired state and survived, became permanent residents of these facilities, transformed so completely their consciousness seemed altered. Maybe partly disconnected from their bodies, they became living strategic assets.
Providing what kind of intelligence?
Military intelligence gathered through means beyond normal spying, insights into mass psychology for predicting unrest, maybe even perceiving the intentions of foreign leaders. They were maintaining a population of tortured individuals specifically to provide supernatural or deep psychological intelligence.
It sounds like science fiction mixed with the Inquisition. It's almost unbelievable. We have all these fragments, Vetus's letter, the Vindolanda tablets, the Pergamon Treatise. Is there one thing that ties it all together?
There is, and that's Section 7, the Palatine Codex. This is the keystone. Discovered in 1969, almost accidentally, during cataloging deep in the Vatican Library.
What is it?
It's a complete copy of a comprehensive manual for imperial administrators. Written around 127 AD, during Hadrian's reign, the height of many of these programs, it's essentially the master playbook, detailing a full scope, the integration of all these hidden programs.
So it confirms they weren't separate things, not just mad emperors doing their own thing.
Absolutely confirms it. The Codex lays out how they were interconnected components of one massive integrated system, all designed to maximize Roman power through unconventional, horrifying means. It's a literal map of institutionalized horror.
How integrated? Could you give an example?
It explicitly details how the child trafficking networks were the supply chain for the biological warfare research subjects, how the findings from the torture research fed into the religious experimentation for creating oracles, how medical cannibalism was linked to military strategy for enhancing soldiers. It shows the whole horrifying machine working together.
The core idea being transcend human limits through systematic suffering.
That seems to be the terrifying logic underpinning it all. An attempt to overcome the normal constraints of biology, psychology, even maybe mortality and perception through the methodical exploitation of pain and life.
And the tone of the Codex. Is it remorseful or boastful?
Neither. That's what's possibly the most chilling thing. The language is cold, precise, utterly bureaucratic. It includes detailed cost-benefit analyses.
Cost-benefit for torture.
Yes. Treating human lives, children, prisoners, conquered peoples as resources, input units to be optimized for imperial output. The authors discuss torture, child trafficking, bioweapons with complete detachment, like they're writing an engineering manual. They'll compare the efficiency of, say, a Gallic child's nervous system versus a Dacian child's for specific extended pain protocols. It's calculation, not sadism.
And when this was found in 1969, it wasn't exactly front-page news.
Total concealment, classified immediately at the highest levels of Vatican security. The few scholars who saw it initially had to sign non-disclosure agreements. The official position still is that the Codex is probably a clever forgery.
Despite the archaeology.
Despite the fact that pretty much every archaeological find we've discussed, the scarred children under Palazzo Massimo at the labs near Cologne, the devices in the Domus Aurea lines up perfectly with the details in the Codex. The physical evidence keeps confirming the manual they claim is fake.
So putting this all together,
Yeah.
the Rome we learn about in school, the Rome of law, legions, and literature, it's only part of the story, maybe the smaller part.
It forces a fundamental, really uncomfortable reassessment. We celebrate Rome's sophistication, its legacy, but these programs, detailed in the Codex and hinted at by the fragments, they weren't just blips of madness. The evidence points strongly towards them being integral to Rome's success, built on a foundation of organized, calculated cruelty far beyond what we usually imagine. These hidden programs look like essential components of imperial power, not exceptions to it.
And even with the Codex and the archaeology, there's still so much we don't know. Because of the secrecy, the sealed sites.
Exactly. We only have fragments, compelling, horrifying fragments, yes. But they might only hint at the true scale. The deliberate concealment was effective. We might never know the full extent of this, the systematic darkness at the heart of the empire.
So as we wrap this up, what's the final thought for us looking back at this? What should we take away from this deep dive into Rome's shadows?
I think the source material forces us to confront a really difficult idea, that maybe civilization and barbarism aren't opposites, maybe they're partners, entwined. The material suggests Rome didn't just fall because, barbarians beat down the gates. Maybe it fell because it had already hollowed itself out from the inside. By making systematic cruelty, the industrial exploitation of suffering, a core part of its imperial policy.
The idea that the peak of technical civilization could be inseparable from the calculated depths of horror.
It's a chilling thought to end on, that achieving that level of power required embracing that level of darkness systematically.